Space was dark, cold, and silent, but Captain Raynor knew silence could be dangerous. He sat alone in his ship, the Starfire, a small patrol vessel made for peacekeeping missions. It had been 3 years since the war between humans and Zerthians ended. Now Earth and Zerthia were trying to live in peace. Raynor was one of the few humans allowed to patrol near their space. He didn't mind the quiet, but today, something was wrong. A red light blinked on his dashboard. Incoming signal. Unknown source. He tapped a button and static filled the air. Then came a voice, soft, scared, and full of pain. "Help me. I'm cold." "Please." Raynor sat still, his heart pounding. The voice was not human. It was high-pitched, weak, almost like a child. The AI repeated the message. "Help me. I'm cold." "Please." Raynor leaned forward, reading the signals. Location, Sector 9. His stomach twisted. Sector 9 was a restricted zone. 5 years ago, during the war, the Zerthian royal shuttle vanished there. It was said to be carrying the Queen's daughter. Princess Alira. The Queen believed her daughter was dead. Everyone believed it. But now this signal. Raynor stood up, walked to the front window of the ship. Stars blinked in the distance, but beyond them lay the broken edges of Sector 9. A field of old wreckage, frozen bodies, and forgotten war machines. He knew going there was against orders. His mission was only to monitor and report, but he couldn't ignore that voice. He pressed a button, opening a private comm link. "Command, this is Captain Raynor. I'm picking up a strange signal from Sector 9. A tired voice responded. "Ignore it, Captain. That zone is off limits. Probably just interference." "No, sir, it sounds alive," Raynor said. "We lost thousands in that area. Echoes from old black boxes still play tricks on the scanners." "Stay on your route," the voice replied. Raynor stared at the screen. He reached out, muted the channel. "Sorry, Command," he whispered. "I'm going." The engines of the Starfire roared softly. He turned the ship and flew toward the forbidden zone. As he entered Sector 9, the lights dimmed. Space here was different, darker, colder, full of shadows. Old ships floated like dead whales in the deep sea, metal torn, engines frozen, names lost in time. Raynor moved slowly, eyes scanning every corner. The signal grew stronger. "Help me. I'm cold. I don't want to die." That voice, it was real. He felt it, deep inside. He remembered stories from the war about how the Zerthian queen cried for weeks after losing her daughter. She had sworn revenge, started the bloodiest battles, and now her child might still be alive. Raynor's scanner beeped. He locked onto a strange object hidden between 2 wrecked cruisers. It was small, like a coffin made of glass and glowing steel. He turned on the ship's spotlight and gasped. It was a cryopod, and inside was a young girl. She had glowing blue skin, silver hair floating in frozen mist, and her tiny hands were curled into fists. Her eyes were closed, but her face was peaceful. A single mark was visible on her shoulder, the royal symbol of Zerthia. "It's her," Raynor said softly. "It's Princess Alira." Suddenly, the ship shook. Warning alarms blared. Something was moving in the shadows. Raynor turned to the radar. Unidentified ship approaching fast. He had no time. He activated the magnetic arm, grabbed the cryopod, and pulled it aboard. As he turned to escape, the unknown ship fired. Bright lasers flashed past his ship. He dodged quickly. Moving through tight spaces between broken ships, they were chasing him. Whoever they were, they didn't want the princess found. Raynor opened the comms again. "Command, I've recovered a cryopod, possible royal life form, requesting backup." Silence, then a robotic voice. "Transmission blocked, jamming field detected." He was alone. Alone with a frozen princess and enemies in the dark. Raynor looked at the girl. She was still asleep, but her hand had moved slightly. She was alive. He tightened his grip on the controls. He had to get her home, no matter the cost, because deep down, he knew this child was more than royalty. She was the key to peace, to hope, to something bigger than war. And someone out there wanted that hope destroyed. Asterisk. The ship was shaking. Captain Raynor gripped the controls, trying to stay steady as lasers lit up the dark sky outside. He had the cryopod now, but someone out there didn't want him to have it. Who were they? Pirates? War scavengers? Or something worse? He didn't know, and he didn't care. His only goal now was to protect the child. Inside the ship's cargo bay, the cryopod lay still, covered in frost. Raynor glanced back through the rear camera feed. She was still asleep inside, curled like a baby in a crystal cradle. Princess Alira, daughter of the Xerthian queen. Lost for 5 years, he didn't need proof, that royal mark on her skin. It was all the proof he needed. The enemy ship fired again. One shot hit the side panel, causing sparks to fly. Shields at 47%, the AI warned. Raynor pulled the ship into a steep dive, weaving through floating wrecks like a ghost, slipping through a graveyard. But he couldn't run forever. He needed a place to hide, repair, and wake the girl up. He set course for an abandoned moon base, hidden beneath the surface of a nearby asteroid. He'd been there once, years ago. It was off-grid, forgotten by both humans and Xerthians. Perfect. As soon as the Starfire slipped into the shadows of the asteroid, the enemy ship lost its trail. Raynor landed the ship quietly, engines cooling with a soft hiss. He stepped into the cargo bay and stood in front of the cryopod. The girl inside looked like she was only 10 or 11, so small, so fragile, and yet something about her seemed powerful, like a storm hiding inside a snowflake. He reached for the activation switch. Pod temperature stable, the AI confirmed. Revival process will begin in 30 seconds. Raynor stood back, heart racing. The frost on the glass began to melt. The soft blue lights inside the pod grew brighter. Her fingers twitched, then her eyes opened. They were golden bright, glowing like twin suns. She gasped, sitting up quickly. Confused and afraid, Raynor raised his hands, slowly. "It's okay," he said gently. "You're safe now." But she didn't understand his words. She spoke in a soft alien language, her voice shaking. Her hand lit up with faint blue energy, as if ready to defend herself. Raynor didn't move. He just knelt down slowly, placed his gun on the floor, and said again, "Safe. You're safe." She looked at him, blinking, trying to understand. Then something strange happened. A soft glow appeared between them, like a psychic wave of light. Her mind was reaching out. Raynor felt it like a whisper in his thoughts, not words, but feelings, images, memories. She saw fear in him. She saw hope. She saw that he had saved her, not taken her, not hurt her. And in return, she showed him flashes of her past. A bright ship, loud alarms, fire, screaming, her mother's voice, calling her name, a crash. And then darkness, years of floating in frozen silence, forgotten. The link faded. She blinked again, and this time she looked at him without fear. She placed her hand on the glass of the pod and slowly smiled. Raynor let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He opened the pod. Warm air rushing out in waves. She stepped out, her small feet touching the cold floor. Her skin shimmered with tiny specks of light, like stars on water. She looked around, then pointed to herself. "Alira," Raynor nodded. "Alira," he repeated. Then he pointed to himself. "Raynor." She tilted her head, curious. Then she smiled again and repeated softly, "Raynor." But before the moment could settle, the ship's warning lights flashed red. Unidentified. "Energy pulse detected," the eye said. Raynor rushed to the cockpit. Someone had traced the Starfire's trail to the asteroid. They were coming, again, and this time, they knew who he had. Raynor turned back to Alira. She stood in the hallway, hugging a metal pole for balance. She looked at him, calm but curious. He had no time to explain. "We have to go," he said, and motioned for her to follow. She nodded, understanding enough. The engines roared back to life. Raynor knew he couldn't run forever. Soon someone would tell the Queen. Soon the galaxy would know. Princess Alira was alive. But until then, He was her shield, her sword, and her only chance to go home. The engines of the Starfire hummed louder as the ship slipped away from the asteroid's shadow. Raynor didn't speak. His hands moved quickly over the controls, eyes locked on the radar. A red dot had appeared behind them, just one, but fast. Too fast. Alira sat silently in the co-pilot seat, her golden eyes watching him. She didn't understand the human technology around her, but she understood fear. She could feel it in Raynor's heartbeat. She could hear it in the low growl of the ship's thrusters as they climbed toward deep space. Raynor glanced at her. "You doing okay?" he asked, knowing she wouldn't reply. But she gave a tiny nod. He sighed. "Good." Then the alarm beeped again. 2 more red dots joined the first. Whoever was chasing them wasn't giving up. "Unknown vessels in pursuit," the eye warned. "Weapons armed," Raynor cursed under his breath. This was supposed to be a peace zone. He muttered, but peace was fragile. And a royal child, long thought dead, was enough to shake the stars. He pushed the ship faster, diving into a nearby meteor belt. Huge rocks spun wildly in space, crashing into each other with slow, deadly force. It was dangerous, but it was also cover. The enemy ships followed. Raynor weaved between giant stones of ice and metal, the Starfire dancing through the storm. Alira gripped the edge of her seat, her face tight but calm. She wasn't crying, she wasn't afraid, she was watching, learning. One of the chasing ships got too close. It clipped a spinning rock and exploded in a burst of red fire. Raynor smiled, just a little. "One down," he said. 2 to go. But the remaining ships were smarter, faster. They didn't make the same mistake. They stayed close, dodging every stone like ghosts. Raynor slammed a button on the dashboard, releasing flare pods. Small metal balls shot out behind the Starfire, glowing with bright heat signatures. The enemy missiles followed the decoys, exploding in the distance. But the ships kept coming. Raynor knew he couldn't outrun them forever. He needed help. He needed to send a message. But comms were still jammed. Whoever was after them had the tech to block long-range signals. That meant one thing: this wasn't just random scavengers. This was organized, planned, professional. Someone powerful didn't want Alira going home. Raynor turned to her. She was breathing calmly now, her eyes closed. Her hands glowed faintly. He blinked. "Are you meditating?" he asked, confused. Then suddenly his console blinked. Incoming pulse detected. Royal frequency. What? He hadn't sent anything. He looked at Alira. She opened her eyes slowly and whispered, "Mother." Raynor stared at her. "You just sent a signal?" She nodded, placing her hand over her chest. "She hears. Somewhere across the stars." Queen Zalara felt a jolt in her mind. A soft voice calling from a place she thought was long lost. Her daughter, alive. Tears welled in her silver eyes. But her voice remained strong. "Find that signal," she commanded. "Now." Back on the Starfire, Raynor saw the radar shift. A green dot blinked at the edge of the map. "Unidentified friendly vessel approaching," the AI said. Raynor grinned. "You did it, kid." But the enemy wasn't done. The last 2 ships fired at full power, aiming to destroy him before help arrived. Raynor turned sharply, dodging the blasts. One beam grazed the wing of his ship, sending sparks flying inside the cabin. Alira didn't flinch. She stood up slowly, walked to the center of the cockpit. Her hands began to glow again, brighter this time. Raynor tried to stop her. "Hey, wait, don't." But then everything around them stopped. The enemy ships froze in place, their engines silent, their weapons offline. "What the?" Raynor whispered. Alira stood perfectly still, her eyes glowing gold. A strange hum filled the ship like a heartbeat. Then the enemy ships began to drift powerless, shut down. Raynor stared at her in shock. "You did that?" She looked at him, tilted her head. "Danger gone," she said softly. Raynor collapsed back into his seat. Speechless, who was this child? She wasn't just royal, she was something more. The green dot moved closer on the radar. Soon the friendly ship came into view. It was massive, silver, and shaped like a winged serpent Zerthian royal guard vessel. Raynor stood as the screen lit up. A voice spoke through the static. "Human vessel, prepare for boarding." Raynor looked at Alira. She reached out and held his hand. He didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was clear. He wasn't just a soldier anymore. He was part of something far bigger than any war, and now the galaxy was watching. The inside of the royal Zerthian vessel was nothing like Raynor had ever seen. The walls shimmered with soft silver light, pulsing gently like the rhythm of a heart. There was no metal, no harsh edges, just smooth glowing surfaces that moved like breathing skin. It didn't feel like a machine. It felt alive. Raynor stood close to Alira as armored guards surrounded them. Their armor was made of living crystals. Their eyes glowed like blue fire. They didn't speak to Raynor, but they bowed when Alira walked past. She walked slowly, calm and quiet, her small hand still holding Raynor's. He wasn't sure if she trusted him now, or if she simply didn't want to be alone. One of the guards finally turned to him. "The Queen is waiting," Raynor swallowed. He wasn't ready for this. He had rescued a lost child, yes, but he was still just a soldier, a human. And this was a queen, one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. A queen who believed her daughter had died 5 years ago. They walked down a long corridor filled with glowing vines and soft whispers. The ship itself seemed to respond to Alira's presence. The walls lit up where she stepped, tiny floating lights following her like fireflies. At the end of the hall stood a grand door shaped like a crescent moon. It opened without a sound, revealing a tall, silver-skinned woman standing alone. Her back was turned, her long hair flowing like liquid light. She stood still, her arms crossed, her shoulders tense. Raynor stepped forward slowly. "Your Majesty," he said softly. The Queen turned. Her eyes were cold, unreadable, glowing white like distant stars. She looked not at Alira, but at Raynor. "You stole her," she said, voice sharp and heavy. "You brought her into war space. You made her a target." Raynor opened his mouth to explain, but she raised a hand. Her guards stepped forward, weapons glowing. Alira gasped and ran between them, holding her arms wide. "No," she said, her voice shaking. Then she looked up at her mother, eyes wet with tears. "Mom." The room went still. The guards froze. The Queen's lips parted, trembling. Alira took a step forward, her small hands glowing faintly as if reaching not just with her body, but her soul. "Mom." "I'm back," she said, voice barely a whisper. "He saved me." The Queen stared, her glowing eyes flickering like fading stars. Then her knees gave out. She collapsed to the floor, her arms open wide. Alira ran into them, wrapping her arms around her mother's neck, and for the first time in years, Queen Zilara cried, not the cry of a ruler, but the cry of a mother who had lost everything and suddenly found it again. Raynor stood still, unsure whether to speak or just watch. The Queen looked up at him, her face streaked with silver tears. "You brought her back to me," she said softly. "I didn't believe it was possible." Raynor nodded. "I found her in Sector 9, trapped in a cryopod. Someone left her there." "Hidden?" The Queen's eyes narrowed. "Left her?" She repeated, "No. Someone wanted her gone." Her hands clenched, the tears turning to anger. That shuttle wasn't lost. It was sabotaged. Raynor felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you saying someone tried to kill her?" The Queen stood up slowly, holding Alira close. "There are enemies who would rather see Zerthia burn than watch peace bloom," she said. "They knew her death would break me. And it nearly did." Alira leaned against her mother, exhausted, but her mind was still awake. She looked at Raynor and said softly, "There were voices before I slept. Someone said, 'Make it look like an accident.'" The Queen's face turned pale. "I know that voice," she whispered. And suddenly the room turned cold. She turned to one of her guards. "Send a message to the High Council," she commanded. "Tell them the princess has returned." Then she looked at Raynor. "You are under royal protection now," she said, "but you are also under suspicion." Raynor blinked, surprised. "I saved her," he said firmly. "I know," the Queen replied, "but I don't know who else knows what you know." She turned away, walking toward a chamber of lights. "Rest," she said without looking back. "Soon, the galaxy will know the truth." Raynor stood there in silence. The stars outside the window flickered like distant candles. He had risked everything to bring one child home, but he had no idea that saving her was only the beginning, because in the shadows of power, someone still watched, someone who knew the girl had returned and that her memory could destroy everything. The palace was no longer quiet. Guards marched through the silver halls. Voices echoed in every chamber, and security drones zipped through the air like angry insects. The return of Princess Alira had shaken the heart of Zerthia, but not everyone was celebrating. Captain Raynor sat alone in a golden chamber. 2 guards stood at the door, silent and unmoving. He had been given food, water, and a soft place to rest. But it didn't feel like kindness. It felt like a cage. He watched through the glass wall as alien servants passed by, whispering in low tones. Some pointed at him. Some looked at him with fear, others with hate. To them, he was the outsider. The human, the one who brought back a lost princess. And maybe something more. Raynor's mind raced. Was the Queen telling the truth? Had someone really tried to kill her daughter? Why, what had they gained from her death? And most of all, who? Before he could think further, the door opened. The Queen stepped in, wearing a long robe that flowed like moonlight. Her eyes no longer wept, now they burned. "Captain Raynor," she said coldly. "You will speak with the council." Raynor stood, unsure what to say. "Do they think I'm the enemy?" he asked. The Queen tilted her head. "I don't know," she said, "but they will want answers." 2 guards escorted him down a long hall. At the end stood a massive room with curved walls and floating chairs. The Zerthian High Council. 7 figures sat in silence, each wrapped in robes of stars and shadow. They didn't blink, didn't move. They stared at Raynor like a lab experiment. The Queen stood beside him and spoke. "This human risked his life to bring my daughter home. He found her in Sector 9, trapped in a forgotten pod." One of the council members raised a hand. A voice echoed through the chamber. "And how do we know he didn't put her there?" Raynor stepped forward. "I didn't even know who she was until I saw the royal mark. I picked up a weak distress call and followed it. I saved her because no one else would." The room was quiet. Another counselor leaned forward. "Did you hear anything before you found her?" Raynor nodded. "Yes, I heard someone say make it look like an accident." The Queen's face darkened. The room began to vibrate. Everyone turned toward her. She raised one hand, and the air thickened like a storm building in silence. "I know that voice," she said slowly. "It belongs to Lord Viker." Gasps filled the room. Raynor had never heard that name before, but the council members looked stunned. Lord Viker was one of the Queen's closest advisors, a powerful leader, a hero of the war, and now a traitor. The Queen's voice grew sharp. "He led the royal shuttle mission the day Alira vanished. He was the last one to see her alive." Raynor took a step forward. "Then he's the one who ordered the cryopod buried in debris." The Queen nodded, and for the first time, her mask broke, her hands trembled, her voice cracked. "He told me the ship was attacked. He said my daughter was gone. I believed him. I trusted him." She looked up, eyes glowing with fury. "I built peace with the enemy, while he built lies in the shadows." Suddenly, the doors flew open. A guard ran in, his armor scratched and smoking. "Your Majesty, Lord Viker's fleet has broken from orbit. He's fleeing." The Queen's entire body shimmered with energy, like a star about to explode. "No," she whispered. "He will not run from justice." She turned to the council. "By royal decree, I placed Lord Viker under arrest for treason. He tried to destroy the royal line. He tried to destroy peace." Then she turned to Raynor. "You were the only one who listened to a cry in the dark. You saved her when everyone else forgot. And now I ask you, will you help me bring him back?" Raynor looked at her, surprised. Me? She nodded. He knows you're not part of my world. That makes you unpredictable. Useful. Raynor looked down for a moment. Then at the memory of Alira's face when she said, "He saved me." He looked back up and nodded. "I'll bring him back." The Queen stepped forward and placed something in his hand, a small stone, glowing softly with Alira's energy. "She be able to feel you," she said. "And you'll feel her." Raynor felt the warmth in his hand, and he knew. This was no longer about saving one life. It was about saving peace itself. As he turned to leave, alarms echoed through the palace once again. A fleet of unknown ships had just entered Zerthian space. They weren't friendly. The real war was just beginning. The sky above Zerthia had changed. Dark ships circled like vultures in orbit. Their weapons were not firing yet, but the message was clear: war was near. Inside the royal palace, silence held the air like glass. Everyone was waiting. Waiting for answers, waiting for truth. Raynor stood in a soft chamber filled with starlight. The walls shimmered like the night sky, but the mood inside was tense. Princess Alira sat in the middle of the room, her knees tucked under her, hands resting on her lap. She looked calm, but Raynor knew the truth. She had questions, and no one had answered them yet. The Queen stood at a distance, watching, breathing, hurting. She had her daughter back, but 5 years apart had carved a canyon between them. She didn't know how to cross it, how to begin again. Raynor walked over slowly and knelt beside Alira. "She's here," he whispered. "She wants to talk to you." Alira didn't move. Her voice came out small. "She forgot me." Raynor looked at her gently. "No, she mourned you," he said. "She cried for years. She just never thought you were still alive." Alira finally looked up, her golden eyes glowing. "She believed him," she said. "Lord Viker." She believed him instead of her heart. Raynor said nothing. He couldn't defend the Queen, but he also couldn't ignore the pain in Alira's voice then. The Queen stepped forward. Her steps were slow, unsure. She had led armies, ruled planets, signed treaties with galaxies. But today, she was just a mother. "Alira," she said. The girl turned, but her face stayed still. "I failed you," the Queen said, her voice trembling. "I believed a lie." Alira stood, her hands shaking. "Why didn't you feel me?" she asked. "We were linked. You told me a mother can always feel her child." The Queen's eyes filled with tears. "I tried," she whispered. "After the crash, I called your name every night. I sent signals, prayers, anything. But it was like your voice vanished." Alira's face softened just a little. She looked down at her own hands. "I was frozen. Trapped," she said. "I screamed in my dreams, but no one answered." The Queen stepped closer. She reached out slowly. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said, "but I am still your mother, and I still love you." There was a pause, a silence full of pain and hope. Then Alira took one step forward and another, then she ran. She threw herself into her mother's arms. The Queen held her tight, tears falling from her eyes like silver rain. Alira pressed her face into her mother's chest and whispered, "I missed you." Raynor turned away, letting them have their moment. He walked to the window and stared at the stars above, but one star was moving, a small dot, coming fast, too fast. Suddenly, the palace shook. The lights flickered, alarms rang through the halls. "Warning, external impact detected." The AI voice said, "Enemy ship has breached outer shield." Raynor turned. The Queen held her daughter close, protecting her with her body. "Take her to the vault," she shouted. Guards rushed in. Surrounding them, Raynor grabbed his communicator. "Status report," he said. A soldier's voice replied. "Lord Viker's fleet has entered atmosphere. They're coming for the girl." Raynor looked at the Queen. "They're not here to start a war," he said. "They're here to finish one." The Queen nodded. She turned to Alira and held her face gently. "You are not just my daughter," she said. "You are the future of this world. Do not let them take that from you." She kissed her forehead, then looked at Raynor. "I need you to protect her." She trusts you more than anyone else." Raynor hesitated. He was a soldier, not a hero, but one look at Alira, and he knew he would die for her if he had to. "I'll protect her with my life," he said. The vault doors opened, glowing with ancient energy. Alira and Raynor stepped inside as guards sealed the entrance behind them. Outside, warships covered the sky. Inside, a mother stood alone, preparing to face her old enemy. Her eyes were no longer soft, they were sharp like blades. Queen Zalara had her daughter back, and now she had nothing left to lose. The vault was quiet, too quiet. The only sound came from Raynor's slow footsteps echoing against the smooth crystal walls. Beside him, Alira sat silently, watching the glowing symbols shift on the floor. Her fingers gently traced the carvings, each one connected to her bloodline, her power, her history. Raynor looked at her and asked softly, "Are you scared?" She shook her head. "I'm angry," she whispered. "They wanted me gone, erased, forgotten." Raynor sat beside her. "But you're still here," he said. "And you're stronger than they ever imagined." Outside the vault, explosions rocked the palace. The enemy had come in wave ships, dark as smoke, weapons bright as suns. Vaker's fleet attacked with no mercy. He wasn't there to talk. He was there to end what he started in the central hall. Queen Zalara fought like a storm. Her hands lit the air with psychic fire. Her voice commanded the guards like thunder. But even she knew this was not just a battle. This was a trap. They weren't trying to destroy the palace. They were trying to isolate the vault, trying to break through inside. Alira stood suddenly. Her eyes glowed gold again. She touched the center of the floor, and the whole room responded, lights rising, patterns forming a path beneath her feet. Raynor jumped up. "What are you doing?" he asked. She looked at him calmly. "I'm waking the heart of Zerthia," she said. "This place was built by the first queens. It holds the power to end a war. Or start one." Raynor stepped back. "Can you control it?" Alira looked unsure. "I don't know," she said. "But I have to try." The lights climbed up her arms like vines of fire. Her hair floated as energy circled her body. She began to hum softly, a language older than memory. The room trembled, then responded. Far above, in the middle of battle, the skies cracked open with light. A great beam shot from the top of the palace. It didn't destroy, it revealed. Every ship under Vaker's command was now outlined in blue, fire-marked, traced, exposed. The palace's defense system locked on. "Fire," the queen ordered, one by one. Enemy ships exploded in brilliant flashes. The tide was turning, but then, from the deepest part of the fleet, a massive black ship appeared. Vaker himself. He had not run. He had waited. His voice echoed through every channel. "Give me the girl, or I burn your world." Raynor heard it in the vault. He clenched his fists. "Coward," he muttered. He turned to Alira. "We have to stop him." Alira stepped toward him, her body now glowing fully. "I'm ready," she said. The vault doors opened with a great rumble, and the two of them, one human soldier and one alien princess, stepped out together. The queen stood at the balcony, surrounded by fire and light. When she saw them, her face filled with both relief and fear. "There's no more time," she said. "He's coming down himself." From the black ship, a dark pod landed with thunder. The doors hissed open. Lord Vaker stepped out, tall, armored, his face hidden behind a sharp silver mask. He walked with confidence, like someone who believed the world already belonged to him. He looked at Alira. "So the frozen child lives," he said coldly. He raised his hand. "Come with me, and I'll spare your mother's life." Raynor stepped in front of her. "Over my dead body," he said. Vaker laughed. "That can be arranged." He raised his arm and fired. A blast of dark energy flew toward them. But Alira raised her own hand. The blast stopped mid-air, turned to light, and vanished. Then she spoke. "Your lies end today." Her voice echoed across the sky. She walked forward slowly. "I remember everything," she said. "You ordered the crash. You wanted the throne. Vecker raised both hands and fired again, but this time Raynor ran straight toward him. Dodging blasts, drawing fire, he fired back with his small human weapon, not strong enough to kill, but enough to distract. Then Alira raised her hands. To the sky, a wave of light burst from her chest. It struck Vecker like a comet. His armor shattered, his mask cracked. He fell to his knees, defeated. The queen walked toward him, her eyes full of sadness. "You were family," she whispered. "And you tried to destroy mine." Vecker looked up, his eyes empty. "I lost everything," he said. "And I wanted you to lose it too." He was taken away, not as a warrior, but as a traitor. The battle ended, the fire faded, and peace returned later as the sun rose over the towers of Zerthia. Raynor stood by his ship ready to leave. Alira hugged him tightly. "You saved me," she whispered. "You saved us all." Raynor smiled. "I guess I did." The queen walked over. "You can stay," she said. "You'll be treated like family." But Raynor shook his head. "My mission is complete," he said. "Others out there still need saving." He stepped into his ship. The engines roared to life, and as the ship rose into the sky, Alira waved. Her eyes full of light, her heart full of hope, because one soldier, one stranger, had brought peace back to an entire world.